You wouldn't believe the sheer nerve of what unfolded that day. Picture this. You step outside your house on a quiet Saturday morning, planning to give your pride and joy a proper wash, a sleek, custom Mustang you've spent years building, only to find a complete stranger in your driveway, casually running her fingers along the hood like it already belongs to her. That's exactly how I first encountered Karen. She wasn't there admiring the craftsmanship. She wasn't asking questions out of curiosity. No, she had already convinced herself the car was meant for her son. Perfect, she said with a satisfied grin, as if she had just stumbled upon a prize. I knew we'd get lucky moving into this neighborhood. My son's been wanting a car just like this. And since you clearly don't need 2 vehicles, you can hand this one over. It's only fair. At first, I genuinely thought she was joking. Maybe some odd form of neighborly humor. But her face stayed completely serious, and her tone carried a sharp edge of entitlement. She wasn't making a request, she was issuing a demand. A chill ran through me, not out of fear, but pure disbelief. Still, I kept my composure. "Excuse me," I said evenly. "This is my car. It's not going anywhere." Karen let out a dismissive scoff and crossed her arms tightly. "You clearly don't understand how things work around here," she snapped. "We're part of the HOA. My husband sits on the board, and when the board decides something benefits the community, we make it happen. You're new, so don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." Her arrogance was overwhelming. The way she looked at me, it was as if I were just another piece in her little neighborhood game, someone she could pressure into giving up something valuable. What she didn't realize was that I wasn't just some average homeowner. My daily work didn't involve fixing fences or mowing lawns. I ran the police department. Of course, I didn't reveal that immediately. Instead, I let her keep talking, digging herself deeper with every word. She went on and on, listing reasons why my Mustang would be better suited for her teenage son, who, according to her, somehow deserved it more than I did. Every sentence was dripping with entitlement. At one point, she even threatened to report me to the HOA for hoarding vehicles, as if owning a classic car was some kind of violation. Outwardly, I stayed calm. Inwardly, I was boiling. What she didn't understand was that her threats weren't just meaningless. They were setting her up for a downfall so big, she wouldn't even realize it until it hit her. And that's when my battle with HOA Karen truly began. Karen didn't leave after I refused her. If anything, telling her no only made her more determined. The very next morning, I opened my door to find a bright orange HOA violation notice taped right to it. In bold letters, it read, "Unapproved vehicle storage. Remove immediately or face fines." I actually laughed. Unapproved vehicle storage? My Mustang was sitting in my own driveway, spotless and gleaming. It wasn't some rusted wreck. It wasn't blocking anything. But to Karen, that notice was a weapon. She thought she could pressure me into giving in. Later that same day, she showed up again, this time with her teenage son in tow. He walked up like he already owned the place. Circling the car, tugging at the door handle, even trying to look inside, Karen stood beside him with a proud expression, arms folded as she had already won. "This is going to look amazing when we take it to his school," she said loudly enough for me to hear from the porch. "We'll take better care of it than you ever could." I walked toward them slowly, deliberately. "Touch my car again," I said firmly, "and you'll regret it." There was no mistaking my tone. Her son just smirked. "What are you gonna do, old man? Call the HOA? Karen snapped her fingers at him like she was giving instructions. "Go on, honey. Get in." He's just being dramatic. That was when I decided to show just a glimpse of my badge. I didn't make a big deal out of it, just a quick flash from my wallet. But the reaction was instant. Karen's eyes widened. Her son froze mid-step. "You think the HOA runs things around here?" I asked calmly. "Let me make this very clear. If either of you steps onto my property again or lays a single finger on this car, I will be the one filing charges. And trust me, those charges will stick." For a brief moment, she looked shaken, but Karen wasn't the kind of person to back down when cornered. Instead, she straightened up, lifted her chin, and fired back. "We'll see what the board has to say about this. You can't hide behind your job forever. This community doesn't tolerate troublemakers." I gave her a small smile. "Then maybe you should stop causing trouble." I thought that would be enough to make her retreat. I was wrong. Karen wasn't finished, not even close. In fact, she was just getting started. What she did next would take this situation far beyond a simple neighborhood dispute and turn it into something much bigger, something very public. She was determined to use every bit of HOA authority she could muster. In her mind, all she had to do was push hard enough to break me. That belief, however, turned out to be her biggest mistake. If I had thought the violation notice and the confrontation in my driveway were the height of Karen's behavior, I couldn't have been more wrong. About a week later, I received an official notice requiring me to attend the monthly HOA meeting. According to the letter, my Mustang had been labeled a community nuisance and disciplinary measures were going to be discussed. I didn't need to guess who orchestrated that. When I stepped into the community center that evening, the energy in the room was already tense. Karen sat front and center beside her husband, both wearing self-satisfied smiles as they had already secured a victory. Their son lounged in the back row, grinning as if he had just been handed an early Christmas gift. The meeting barely began before Karen shot to her feet. She pointed straight at me and launched into a speech that sounded rehearsed, dripping with fake concern. "This man refuses to follow community standards," she announced loudly. "His car is disruptive, it lowers property values, and it's a danger to our children. This neighborhood is supposed to represent order and class, and that vehicle simply doesn't belong here." A few residents shifted uneasily in their chairs. Some nodded along, while others looked unconvinced. I said nothing, allowing her to continue. Her husband quickly joined in, reinforcing her claims by bringing up supposed safety issues and even suggesting that my car might not be legally registered. The entire display was clearly designed to box me in and turn the community against me. Eventually, the HOA president looked in my direction. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" I stood up slowly, letting my gaze sweep across the room. Then I placed a small folder on the table in front of me. Inside were all the documents: registration, insurance, emissions compliance, proof of ownership, every detail in perfect order. "My vehicle is completely legal," I said calmly. "It's registered, insured, and fully compliant with all regulations. And as for property values, that Mustang is worth more than many of the cars parked in this neighborhood combined." Karen shot up again, visibly angry. "You're missing the point," she snapped. "This isn't about paperwork. It's about community values. You should give that car to someone who can actually appreciate it. My son, for example." That was the moment I decided I'd heard enough. I reached into my pocket and placed my badge on the table, letting it catch the light. The room went completely silent. "I don't just live here," I said evenly. "I run the police department. And if this harassment continues, false violations, trespassing attempts, coercion, I won't be dealing with it as a neighbor. I'll be dealing with it as law enforcement." The silence that followed was heavy. Karen's confident expression vanished. Her husband's face lost all color. For the first time since this started, they looked uncertain. But Karen wasn't someone who backed down easily. Even as I walked out of that meeting, I could feel the anger radiating from her. She wasn't finished, not yet. The following night, I allowed myself to think she might have finally understood the situation. But people like Karen don't stop. They escalate. The very next morning, I was jolted awake by the harsh sound of metal grinding against pavement. I rushed outside and froze. Karen's son was sitting behind the wheel of my Mustang, attempting to reverse it out of my driveway. The engine roared violently, gears grinding as smoke curled from the tires. He had broken into the car, hot-wired it, and was seconds away from destroying everything I had worked so hard to build. I didn't even need to raise my voice. Within moments, my squad cars came speeding down the street. I had anticipated something like this. After the HOA meeting, I had quietly asked a few officers to keep watch on my property. Karen's threats had been far from empty, and I wasn't about to take any chances. Flashing red and blue lights filled the street as officers jumped out, weapons drawn, shouting commands for him to shut off the engine. Karen came running shortly after, screaming at the top of her lungs. "He's just a kid. You can't arrest him. This is harassment." But he wasn't a child. He was nearly 18, more than old enough to understand what he was doing, and more than old enough to face the consequences. The officers yanked him out of the car, placed him in handcuffs, and began reading him his rights as Karen shrieked uncontrollably. She turned toward me, pointing wildly. "This is your doing. You set him up. You can't do this to us. We'll sue you. We'll ruin you." I stepped forward, my voice steady and firm. "No, Karen. You did this to yourself. I warned you. I gave you every chance to stop. You chose not to listen. By then, neighbors had gathered all around, whispering among themselves, recording everything on their phones. The entire neighborhood was watching the scene unfold. Karen's son is in handcuffs. Karen herself was red-faced and hysterical. The same people she had tried to manipulate at the meeting were now seeing the truth with their own eyes. An entitled bully who believed rules only applied to everyone else. Her husband attempted to step in, but when officers questioned him, it became clear he had known about the plan all along. He hadn't just been aware, he had encouraged it. Both of them were taken in for questioning. Meanwhile, my Mustang was secured back in my driveway, untouched and unharmed. Once everything had settled, the HOA issued an official apology. Karen and her family were removed from the board, fined heavily, and faced legal charges that would follow them far beyond a simple neighborhood dispute. The next morning, I stood outside once again, washing my Mustang as sunlight reflected brilliantly off its polished surface. It was no longer just a car. It had become a symbol, a reminder that no matter how loud entitlement becomes, the law will always speak louder. And Karen learned that lesson the hard way. You don't pick a fight with the man who runs the police department. If you enjoyed watching Karen's meltdown, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Hit the like button if you think justice was served, and leave a comment below sharing what you would have done in this situation. And don't forget to turn on notifications because the next HOA drama is going to be even more intense.